Change isn't just coming, it's already here. This is Ask for Change podcast, hosted by leadership expert Meridith Powell, brings you weekly conversations with leaders and experts who are redefining success in a world of disruption. Let's begin today's journey and turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage.
Let's turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage. I am so excited about today's show, not only for the topic that we're going to be talking about, but also for the expert that I've got on. I have on Dr. Mary Kelly. She is a leadership expert, a world-renowned economist, and I don't think there is anybody better to talk about the shifts and the challenges happening in today's marketplace. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Meredith, thanks so much for having me. We are truly in a time of uncertainty and chaos, and what a lot of people feel is looming crises. And of course, at the heart of all this is massive change.
Yeah. So something I want to really dive into today is something, that our friend Sam Richter brought up. And that was the fact that it is the shifting workplace culture. A couple of years ago, we were on this podcast talking about the fact that the older generation was getting aged out, put out, sent to pasture because companies were looking to hire younger individuals, save on expenses. But now with technology coming into the marketplace, it seems to be the younger folks that are struggling to find employment, struggling to find opportunity, and the older folks that are hanging on longer or being asked to stay in their companies longer. What's your thought process or your take on that?
Thanks for that, because it is an incredibly strange place to be in. I remember my dad being 60 years old and his company said, we're going to fire you and we're going to hire two 25-year-olds at half the price of what it would cost to keep him on. And what that spawned for him was, at his age, he started his own business because he was pushed out by this younger group. That's not what's happening right now. Right now, we've still got the baby boomers who are still working. They turn 65, all of them, by 2030. And right on their heels, of course, is the Gen Xers. Now, here's what's interesting. The Gen Xers have been looking at the baby boomers for years going, are y'all ever going to go home? Go learn to fish. Go play golf. Go play pickleball. Get out of the office. Leave room for us to move up. But that's not happening. What's happening, interestingly enough, are the baby boomers, because they're staying in the jobs, are pushing the millennials out of the workplace. The millennials, keep in mind, they're turning 65 soon. They're right on the heels of the baby boomers. And they are looking demographically at where they are, where they want to be, where they want to live. They are fundamentally changing what retirement looks like. But most importantly for the markets, they are retiring earlier than the baby boomers. They're retiring at 55 and 58 and 60 and 61. And all of a sudden, there's this secondary gap of workers that isn't there. So now we're reaching down to the millennials. And this is where Sam's point, I think, was so critical. And that is, we're looking at the millennials who are in their 30s and 40s. They're not kids. They are capable. They are amazing. They know what to do. But what's happening with some technology, our companies are saying, okay, we only need the 45-year-old and maybe the 25-year-old, and we are gutting the rest of the workforce in between that. So all of a sudden you've got, okay, a 45-year-old, what happens if something happens to that person, or they take a job somewhere else, or they get sick? And now you've got a 25-year-old who has not as much experience. And so I love technology, and so do you, and we use it all the time. But this is fundamentally creating a knowledge gap in our businesses that desperately needs to be filled. And right now, I see a lot of businesses being very short-sighted about where they're going.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In essence, I guess that, companies are just trying to make it through the year and just not thinking, long term about what that is going to mean for them. But I think you make such a great point with, we think so much about the boomers getting out of the workforce, but quite frankly, the millennials are coming right behind them, Gen X and millennials coming right behind them. So what are some of your advice? What should companies be doing and how should they be thinking? I mean, everybody's struggling to make AI return on investment, right? So you've got this huge expense, and it seems like the natural way to save on that would be to cut some of the workforce. But as you said, that's really just it's just a short-term approach. So what is some of your advice based on your expertise with leadership?
So right now, I'm telling my leaders that America does not have a recession problem. We have a succession problem. And this to me is critical because if you are truly planning for the future, you are looking for your top talented people and you are doing as much as you can to keep them in your business. It is critical that you find, identify, and matriculate those people who you want in the future. Now, here's the challenge. Many of those young people, when I say young people, I'm talking anybody younger than me, which is, well, most people, but 20 to 40-year-olds, when you find great talent, you have to hang on to them like they are the lifeblood of your company because they are. And that means you have to create programs that will keep them. You have to talk to them. You have to find out their career goals. You have to listen to them. There's nothing more demotivating to a 25-year-old who has a great idea, ask great questions to be told, well, go take your crayons and go color. We'll talk to you in 5 years. They're going to leave.
Yeah.
And they should. So if you are treating your top talent like you're treating your bottom talent or even your middle talent, your top talent is going to leave you. And frankly, they should. So
Yeah.
if you really want to hang on to your top talent, you have to do all the proactive things, Mayor, that you talk about all the time, because your job as a leader is leadership. So you got to lead.
So there I am. I'm a CEO and I am really wrestling in today's marketplace. I mean, my margins are skinny. I don't know what's going to happen with tariffs. Like how do I make the best decisions around making sure that my organization is profitable and sustainable in the short run as well as profitable and sustainable in the long run?
That's so critical because business owners, founders, and especially public companies are being squeezed and they're being told report quarterly earnings because that matters. That matters for your investment. If your quarterly earnings are great, people put more money into your company. That's fantastic, except you have to sustain that. And when we rely so much on the quarterly, which is very, very short term, it sometimes gets in the way of long-term planning. And this is why we're seeing some trends that frankly alarm me. We are seeing CEOs being replaced more often and in shorter time periods because boards are just trying to figure out how to make shareholders happy and how to keep that money flowing in. So to me, that's kind of dangerous. We're losing knowledge at the very top, but we're also, when the CEO leaves or gets removed, what happens is that CEO usually lands just fine somewhere else. But they also take their top people with them. If you've been working for somebody for a while and you adore them and you love their leadership and the board removes them, well, you're looking around going, well, if they fired Joe Bob and Joe Bob was my CEO or president and I adored Joe Bob and he and I understood each other, wherever he's going, I'm going too. So all of a sudden it guts that talent inside the organization. It also demoralizes the people who are left because they don't know what direction they're going in. And now you have 6 months of upheaval while they frantically try to replace that CEO with an interim, a fractional, or even a real replacement. But there's a big adjustment period. So there's a lot of short-sighted planning going on at high levels, and that concerns me, number one. Number two, what concerns me is when people at that second and third tier of an organization don't feel secure, they simply check out. They show up, they go through all the motions, they're good at what they do, but they're not really vested. And that absolutely translates into every level. It means they are not mentoring the 20 to 40-year-olds. It means they are not fully participating in all of those corporate culture things that we all know is why people love to come to work. They come to work because they feel like there's part of something bigger than themselves. They feel part of a shared experience. There's a shared identity. Doesn't mean people are the same. It means we are working toward a common goal. We feel appreciated at work. We are valued for our ideas. McKinsey came out with a report a couple years ago, and I thought it was about a 60-page report And there were 5 main bullets. And one of those was that employers view employees as transactional, while employees view employers as relational. So our employees want relationships at work with the people we work with. And we as leaders have to establish that. And then number 3, we've got to have mentorship programs. And every time I say that, the baby boomers and the Gen Xers roll their eyes and go, oh God, more work for us as always. Yes, whatever. And they don't want to. I get that. So you have to create a mentorship program that benefits both people equally. I tell all my 50 and 60-year-olds, y'all need a 20 or 30-year-old. You need a mentor for 90 days. I like to swap the mentors and mentees every 90 days. You need a 20 to 30-year-old. And you come in, and I frankly stole this from one of our friends, and it's the GPS question. It's not, what's going on at work? How can I help you? It's what are you grateful for? What are you proud of? And what are you struggling? The
Oh, I
GPS
love that.
questions.
Yeah.
And both sides answer the question. And it creates a deeper thing than, so, well, what do you need help with? Well, I'm having trouble with, Sally Sue. Okay, well, try this. Okay, thanks. Have a good week. Good talk. We want to go deeper. Mentorship is about really, truly learning from another person. And in a good mentorship program, both people are excited about the idea of learning from that other person. We have to stop thinking mentorship is an age or experience driven issue. It's got to be 2 people who get together. We can all learn from someone. We all can. So how do we create that? So I love a good mentorship program that lines people every 90 days, different departments, cross silos, and then says, it is part of your workday. We are going to allocate a lunch budget for, you this month. You take that person to lunch, you talk for 30 minutes, and you meet every 2 weeks. It is part of your job. And this breaks down silos. It helps people understand what's going on in different departments. And most importantly, it is allowing the organization to fill in those knowledge gaps.
Yeah. Here's something though, I think that is I got to tell you that is challenging for me is I feel like I have spent my entire life mentoring, developing, and investing in other people. And I reach a point where you're just fried and burned out from it. Where do you get where do you get the energy and the motivation when you've done it forever and you're just like, oh my God, all I want to do is focus on my own business. And when I'm done at 5 o'clock, I don't want to go have a cup of coffee with somebody. I want to go home. I want to get on my mountain bike. I want to do this. Where do you go to dig in to get that motivation again?
I think that is a question all the Xers and the baby boomers are asking, because when we've done the research on succession planning, who doesn't care? It's the baby boomers. They're like, look, I'm on the final approach here. I am coasting in, and I don't really want to learn more. So what you have to do is you have to say, what's in it for you? What's in it for me? And you have to articulate that. And this might be your top person in the organization. And you're like, hey, Joe Bob, you're the CEO or the president, and you've got to be doing some of this mentorship. And Joe Bob is thinking, but I've got 2 more years as CEO or president. What's in it for me? And the answer is, you built this company. You want to see it do well. This is part of what you need to do. This is your legacy. And you have to pitch it as, first off, it's going to be good for you. Second, it's good for the organization. And third, this is how you are leaving your legacy. It is your wisdom, your experience, but also your other experiences that feed into this. And I firmly believe that most people come to work and they want to do a good job.
Yeah.
But when they are constantly frustrated, when they are burned out, when they don't feel like their ideas matter, when they don't feel like they matter, they kind of get into that, well, why bother? Why bother? And what we have to do is reinvigorate that. We have to get people, especially leaders at the highest level. And I know they all say, I don't have time. You don't have time to not have time. You have to listen to these folks. You have to get people in a room and say, one-on-one, tell me what's going on, fill me in. Just a quick example, I'm working on a succession plan for a credit union. And so I've got all the job descriptions and all the things. And for the top 4 positions, I said, so these are the 4 people who really make this credit union go. These are the top 4 critical people. Now I've got the job descriptions. Tell me what's not in the job description.
Mhm.
What skills, characteristics, abilities does this person need that's an intangible? And that is a really interesting question, because there are those people in every organization that have their ear to the ground. Everybody tells them what's going on. There are those people, they're the
Yes.
ones who bring the donuts, they bring the cookies, they make sure the coffee always has coffee. And they may be a senior person doing this. A lot of times we think it's, the receptionist or whoever. No, there are those people who step up and make sure all the things happen magically that other people don't see. That's that corporate culture. That's the vesting part. It's those critical people. So those are the people we need to really capture. But I love that question. In this job description, it's a perfectly good job description. It's up to date. What other things do we need from the person who fills this job that is not in the description? And this was a good one. The CEO said, my HR manager, my HR director, that needs to be somebody everybody goes to and understands that everything they say is confidential and they can trust her. And
Yeah.
I thought that is such a huge point. So think about if you're a board member and you're trying to hire for that position, you're trying to advise for that position, those intangibles are often the things that make or break success in a company. So I think we need to be paying attention to the intangibles.
I could not agree more. Mary, I want to switch gears a little bit. And just because we've got you on here and you're an economist, I want to talk a little bit about 2026
Mhm.
and what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're hearing.
So 2026, I'm very optimistic about 2026. And I will tell you why. I think that if you look at what President Trump's goals are, he understands that it's not just the first 90 days that matter and the first 100 days, it's the first year of a presidency. And yeah, I know there's a lot of things that just went out there and just shocked people. Absolutely. But now, any good leader goes in strong, fast, and hard. And then you can always get softer. You can't get harder as a leader. So I realize that some people got worried about the tariffs and the trade and all the negotiations and all that. A lot of my business leaders are watching the news 24/7, and they're just getting wrapped up in the things they can't control. Okay. If you are looking for the things you can't control, you'll find them. And a friend of mine said, if you're looking for things that are wrong with an organization, you'll find it. But if you also look for the things that you can control, you need to find that too. And that's what you focus on. So right now, we know that, our 2025 year ended pretty strong at 4.4% annual rate. So that's good. We're looking for overall for 2025 about a 3.5% rate, which is awesome. Inflation has cooled. We are managing the inflation pretty darn well, but right now it's at 2.7%. Wages are at 3.1% increase. So you think, okay, that should balance out. It should be okay. But you got to remember from 2020 to 2024, that period of time, groceries went up by 23%. The average family of 4 saw a 32% increase in all their food budget. That's restaurants, that's groceries and all that. People are still reeling from those increases. So our inflation numbers now, remember, they only go back 12 months. They don't go back 5 years. So that's really where people are still looking at the prices in the grocery store thinking it just seems higher. And it does when you're going back to 23 and 2022 prices. So inflation is cooling. That's good. Interest rates will go down next summer. The Fed came out recently and said they were not going to change anything. We knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And for a variety of reasons. But interest rates will come down in the summer. That will make business loans cheaper. That will make housing loans cheaper. That will make auto loans are based on the 10-year treasury. So we'll see what happens with those. And then the labor market. Right now, the labor market is in a slow downshift. Unemployment was only up by about 50,000 at the end of last month. And employment is kind of stuck at 4.4%, which is up about 0.3% from a year ago. The concern is, again, our young people. Our
Yeah.
young people have an unemployment rate of almost 10%. And when
That's
you consider the part-time workers, it is higher than that. So if you don't consider the people who are just working part-time at, wherever just to have something to do. So that's kind of what's going on for 2026. However, I do feel really optimistic. The trade and tariff issues are going to settle out. It's going to be fine. Control the things you can control. Invest in the places that you know are solid. Don't watch the day-to-day. I know I have some people who have the stock market tickers on their Apple Watch, and every time it buzzes, you can see their heart rate increase. It's like, folks, you can't be so reactive. You've got to be proactive. What I tell my companies is create your strategic plan for the year, create your goals, understand your vision, understand your mission, control what you can control, convey that to your people, and move forward in a way that you know that works. Don't be influenced by things you can't control. Don't be influenced by craziness in the news. Don't be so worried about every little piece of bad news that comes out of fill in the blank. Focus on the things you can control. And when your people say, I'm just so stressed and so worried and so anxious, I can barely focus, encourage them to take a breath, go for a walk for 10 minutes, and don't watch the news for 5 days. Like,
Yeah.
just stop. Don't doom scroll on social media. Don't watch the news, because right now, there was a report that came out that when people post out of anger on social media, it actually increases the dopamine or serotonin or whatever the happy chemical is in your brain. People actually feel better for being hateful on social media. How messed up is that? So we have to stop. We can't feed into that. We've got to be the voice of reason. And, you say this all the time. When you're feeling stressed and crazy, go outside and play.
Yeah. The thing is I completely understand why being evil on social media gives you a dopamine hit. I mean, it's kind of like, I think it's one of the reasons we're all so angry in our cars, because it's kind of a safe place. And there's something, it's kind of like why it feels good to say a cuss word. There's just something, there's a release about it. But you're so right. I mean, I think about, like, all the messages that I get all day long. The social media is programmed to give me those types of messages, and backing up and focusing on those things that you can't control. I mean, those things that you can control, and forgetting about the rest. But I think one of the things that's very challenging for leaders today, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that, is the fact that, there you are, and you're kind of navigating your business and you're doing all these things, but oh my gosh, stuff pops up out of nowhere. I mean, I keep thinking, imagine if you'd owned a business in downtown Minneapolis. I mean, who saw that coming, right? And then this past weekend, we had unbelievable weather issues, and people plan that for the best. How does a CEO or someone navigate the level and the impact of uncertainty that we're seeing today? Because it feels like it is really increasing, and it isn't a matter of whether it happens to you. It's just a matter of when.
Yes, we are in an accelerated pace of change. And when you see that accelerated pace of change, that's where the leadership development comes into play. So, for example, I spent 25 years on active duty in the Navy, and we train our leaders as leaders. A lot of companies don't do that. And when we train for leadership, we give people scenarios and we see how they react, and then we do a lessons learned after that. Okay, what could you have done? Was that a good response? Was that a bad response? What could you have done better next time? Now, we don't do that for every single thing you're going to get thrown at you. What we're doing is developing the leadership skills that allow you to deal with every single thing that's thrown at you. Let me give you a good example. As you know, sometimes I spend wintertime as close to Nashville as possible. And here in Nashville, Pizza Huts, local mom and pop businesses, food trucks. You know what they did? They said, we've got food. If y'all need it, call us. We've got a guy with a snowplow. He drives for the city and he can drop stuff off on his off days. So there's this Pizza Hut that is delivering free pizzas. There are these food trucks that say, we are parked here, come get free food. If you can't get it, people all over next door are saying, fun things like, I grew up in Alaska. I got the truck for this. Even on ice, I've got this. That's not something that is taught in a scenario. That is, first off, some good parenting as a
Yeah.
kid, but it's also leadership development that looks around in a scenario and doesn't say, "Oh, well, we got this ice storm. Guess we can't do anything. We'll just sit back and let it happen to us." No, that's good leadership. That good leadership stepped up and said, "What can we do to help other people?" And that is the biggest shift in my 6 stages of a crisis, challenge, or change. In stage 6, the very first question is, what can I do to support other people? It's looking externally. So
Yeah.
stop focusing on all the crazy that's going on in here. Stop feeling like the deer in the headlights, frozen in the middle of the road, staring at the truck that's barreling down at them. Look externally and see, how can I solve the problems that I'm seeing around me, and start there.
Yeah, you know what I love about that? When I was a kid, my mother used to say when we would be like sad or depressed or upset about something that happened to school, she would never empathize with us or even sympathize with us. Her response was always, the fastest way to get past your own problems is to focus on somebody else's. And it's that external, right? Like you can sit there and think, oh my God, I run this Pizza Hut, our margins are really skinny. What are we going to do? Instead, you turn it into something like that. And look, now you're getting all this publicity on a podcast. I mean, I love the fact that we live in a world where one action can literally change our lives, and one inaction will do nothing more than ensure that we stay stuck.
Absolutely. And we're so fortunate, that there are people out there in the media who are reporting the good.
Yeah.
Focus on the good, default to the good, assume the best of intentions. And I do love the fact that some of these companies and businesses that responded so well during this ice storm, and it was an ice storm. It was like little ice particles of cat litter falling from the sky and then gluing themselves together as icicles on everything. But they took the right action at the right time, and that's leadership.
Yeah. Mary, it is hard to believe, but we are at the end of this podcast. And I always like to end with 2 questions. And the first is, what is your greatest piece of advice as you look at 2026, certainly a year economically that you feel has potential, but certainly full of disruption and uncertainty? What is your greatest piece of advice for our listeners on how to navigate that successfully? And then, of course, how do people find out about you, follow you, and get the unbelievable depth and wealth of information that you have?
So first, action trumps fear. If you are worried, take action. Even if it's one step in the right direction, that is enough for right now. Action trumps fear. I tell this to people at all stages of life, all stages of careers. If you're scared to do something, just take one step in the right direction and focus on that one step. It's like crossing a bridge on a very narrow bridge or a wire bridge, one step at a time in the right direction. And the second thing, I am available at mary@productiveleaders.com. There is a newsletter you can sign up for at productiveleaders.com. And of course, it's free, comes out every week with tips, tools, and techniques to help you be a better leader. Thanks for that.
Awesome. I got to tell you, if you do not follow Dr. Mary Kelly, you need to follow Dr. Mary Kelly. She not only has a depth of information, but she is really on top of today's issues and challenges. And if you want to understand how to navigate uncertainty successfully, reach out, connect with Dr. Mary Kelly at Productive Leaders. And for everybody listening to this podcast, we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Ask for Change. And together, we're going to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.